Good evening. This is the June 27th meeting of the Needham Conservation Commission. I'm Dave Harrer, Conservation Commission Chair. Before we get started, I'd like to confirm members are present and they can hear me. Sue. I don't see her on Zoom. Reed,
Yep, here.
Bill,
Here.
Fred.
I'm here.
Okay, Sue's here. Fred,
Here.
Paulina,
Here.
and Deb and Clay are here. So
Here.
This open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Healy's extension of the open meeting law. Temporary provisions. All supporting materials have been provided to the members and are available on the Conservation Commission website. I will introduce each hearing on the agenda, introduce the applicant, and then ask the consultant or the applicant to provide a brief project presentation. After the applicant's presentation, I will call on each commission member to provide their comments and questions. After comments and questions from the commission members, I'll solicit comments and questions from the staff and then from the general public. Please mute your phone. If you're not speaking, please speak clearly and in a way that can generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you. Please state your name before speaking. And finally, each vote during this meeting will be conducted via roll call. I think it's a light agenda tonight. First item is the meeting minutes. We have 2 minutes, one from June 13th, 2024, and one from October 14th, 2021. I believe 2021. Anybody have any comments or questions?
I did get back on the minutes.
You did what?
I did get back to Clay on the minutes.
Yeah, that's good. I think it saves time that people have any comments to send them in ahead of time. Okay, if there's no further comments, I move that we accept the minutes of let me get the date straight. Of June 13th, 2024 and October 14th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, let's vote. Bill,
Aye.
Paulina,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
And me.
Oh, Sue, I'm
Aye.
sorry. I'm going blind here. My computer. Okay, so next, we might have some enforcement and violation updates. Clay or Deb, anything?
We finally got the revised plan for 10 Lake. So I'll be issuing that tomorrow. That's all I can think of offhand. Do you have anything, Clay?
We got the submittal for 17 George Agate, so that will be on the next meeting.
Oh, that's great. I was wondering if they were, making any progress here. Okay. As far as hearings go, we have 49 Green Street, DEP file 234-911. My understanding is they want to continue that to the next meeting. Is that correct?
So they requested a continuance to the next meeting.
Okay. So we need to vote on that, right? Yes.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we continue the hearing for 49 Green Street, DEP file 234-911 to the next meeting, which is July 11th.
Second.
Second.
Okay, let's vote here. Bill,
Aye.
Paulina,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, and then finally, we have 443 Central Ave, DEP file 234. I guess they don't have the number yet, but we have their notice of intent. Who is here for the applicant?
Hi, my name is Mary Trudeau, and I'm representing the applicant this evening.
Okay, great, Mary. Do you want to briefly go over your application?
I'd love to.
Yeah, good.
Okay, for the record, I'm Mary Trudeau. I am a wetlands consultant that was engaged by Vincent Nazar of Avatar Construction and the owner of the property, whose name is Mohammed Gabis. This project is located on the north side of Central Street. It's an existing single-family home with an expansive driveway. The current house is very close to Central Street. I believe it's about 16 feet off of the frontage. It has a fairly level backyard. There's been historic filling over, I would say, the last 40 years. Good-sized Norway maples on top of the fill, but clearly a raise in grade over the original topography. At the north end of the fill material, which is what the house sits on in the yard and the driveway, there's a fairly steep drop. It's probably 12 to 14 feet drop, maybe a 2-to-1 slope. And at the bottom of that slope, there is a vegetated wetland. I'm going to call it a freshwater vegetated wetland because mapping doesn't show it having any streams or waterways that go through it. This looks like an area that everything got built up around it, and this is the remaining wetland down in the depression. So in any case, I flagged basically the toe of slope at the edge of this fill pile, hung wetlands flags, and we based our site plan off of that delineation. The work that we're proposing to do under this notice of intent is the demolition of the existing single family house and the construction of a larger single family house on the same property. Because of the expansive amount of impervious surface on this property, if you've been there, there's a driveway that comes on the right side of the house off of Central Ave, and it expands into a parking area to the rear of the house, which has been used by, it looks like, landscaping companies or maybe contractors over years in the past. The proposed house, although it has a larger footprint than the existing house, is actually less impervious cover than it currently exists on site. That right now we have just under 5,000 square feet of impervious surface on the site, 4,868. And we're proposing a net decrease of 103 square feet. So our proposed total impervious is about 4,765. This trend carries through in the buffer zone as well, that currently we have 2,149 square feet of impervious surface in the buffer zone, and we are reducing that by 365 square feet for a proposed footprint of impervious surface of just under 1,800 square feet. The house is different from the existing house in several ways. The existing house has no garage. The driveway and the parking area are how cars were housed on this property. The proposed site plan that we have developed has cars still entering on the side of the house, but driving into a garage under on the back of the proposed dwelling. This decision has several implications for this property, because to maintain a grade off of Central Ave and create the parking within a garage that we wanted, it required that we add some fill to the backyard. We had several iterations of plans going back and forth. We had plans that showed as much as 4 or 5 feet of fill. What we've come up with is a plan that incorporates retaining walls and lets us drop the amount of fill considerably. This helps us with our tree loss, that we have submitted a plan to you prepared by our arborist that shows that we have, I think, 22 trees within the site that are larger than 6 inches at breast height. And that we have, let me see, I think 15 or 16 of those trees, 13 of those trees are within the 100-foot buffer zone. With this site plan that we have adjusted the grades on, we've reduced the tree removal to 8 mature trees. And we have proposed a replanting plan that meets your tree policy of 2 trees to 1, with the replacement trees being 2.5 inches in diameter. I believe that we've also substituted several shrubs for at least 1 or 2 of the trees. And the landscaping plan that we gave you roughly shows the locations of these proposed plantings. In the text of the notice of intent, we noted that appropriate tree species for this would be perhaps balsam fir, white pine, or red or white oaks. This would be the introduction of hardwoods onto this site because the trees that are being removed are primarily Norway maples, which are a non-native and invasive species, but they're also a fairly short-lived softwood tree. The materials that we're putting in, albeit smaller, arguably have a longer lifespan. We've also suggested a couple of shrubs, Amelanchier, which is shad bush, the rosebay rhododendron, and a native azalea, pink azalea, that could be used to fill in some of the buffer zone too. We're not doing any work in the 0 to 25-foot buffer zone. If you've been out to the site, the reason that I can say that so quickly is that the slope above the wetland is basically the 0 to 25-foot buffer zone. The 25 to 50-foot buffer zone starts at the top of the existing flat surface. Our site plan does include some landscaping in the 25 to 50-foot zone, but no portion of our house is located within, I think, about 70 feet of the existing wetlands line. We do offer stormwater mitigation on this proposal. We used an engineering firm, Fedora Engineering, who submitted drainage calculations to you, as well as an infiltration system design for this property. The system has 2 components. One captures roof runoff. The second captures driveway runoff. Both feed subterranean infiltration units. And I believe that the capacity of the system was sized for an average of 1 inch over all of the new impervious surface on the property, which I believe complies with Needham's bylaw. We had a little bit of a discrepancy in one of our earlier iterations of the site plan, but we felt that this was the draft version that was most compliant, in which it infiltrated both driveway and roof runoff. At this point, I'd like to open it up to questions, if you would like.
Yeah, thank you. Before we start, do any of the commissioners want to see the site plan? Okay.
I was there today and I took a bunch of pictures if you're interested in those as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I dropped by there today myself. So, Mary, could you put up the site plan, or maybe Clay could do it?
If Clay could do it, that'd be great. I'm working off an iPad and I tend to get disconnected when I try.
Can you do that, Clay?
Oh, he is so good.
Yeah. All right. So let me go to commissioners, see what questions they have. Bill?
See, so the trees circled in red are the 8 trees that are going to be removed?
Yes, they are. The
Mhm.
black dots represent all of the trees that were in the buffer zone on this side of the property. The property is expansive. I mean, this is maybe a third of the entire lot. But we
there were-
didn't topo, or, yeah, you can see, we didn't do any fact finding on the backside.
And there were 13 significant
No,
trees.
There were 8 significant trees that were, I think.
What does significant mean?
It has, in your bylaw or your tree bylaw, it says if it has a diameter at breast height of 6 inches or greater.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd just point out that we also had a definition of a significant tree, quote unquote, that was 32 inches or greater DBH. And that required a 3-to-1 ratio. So I wouldn't use the word significant, just say applicable or, you know.
Yeah,
Tree.
I mean, we were open to, you know, discussing the replacement values and, you know, thinking about what this site really should look like. But we've put this forward to you as a first pass to see if we do meet your performance standards.
Okay, Bill, anything else?
So you picked these 8 out of the 13. Was there a reason for picking these?
It has to do
Maybe
with
even the
the
other
grading. It has to do with the grading on the site more than it has to do with the quality of the trees. As I noted, we want to be able to drive into this garage, which means setting the grade of the house at a certain elevation, which required that we raise the backyard to match the house. So you can see at the top of the drawing on the east side, we show 2 small retaining walls. And that helps us minimize our fill as well. Instead of having a perfectly level backyard that would require a retaining wall where we're showing the tree planting, we've sort of gently graded it down gradient that it's, I don't know, it's not a 2-to-1 slope, it's probably like a 1-to-1 slope, which is still a usable yard, even though it minimizes the fill that we're putting in there.
Okay. I have another question in general, and I might be incorrect on this, but at this point, were the abutters notified?
Yes, I notified
Okay.
over 50 abutters for this project. I'm not sure how they all fell into the 300-foot circle, but they did.
Thanks.
All right, Paulina, do you have any questions?
I have a question. So looking at your plans, it looks like where you're removing trees and you're creating new lawn, it is currently vegetated. Is that correct?
You'd have to go out and look at it to see it. It's been used as a contractor's yard. So it has trees in it, and between the trees, he was piling bricks and lumber and other building materials. It's a very compact, firm yard with not much vegetation on it except for the trees.
Oh, because you
there
have
are photos also, Paulina.
Oh, okay. I'd be happy to see them because you have like a little almost like a
I do
tree
show a
line.
tree line, and there definitely is a canopy out there from the trees that exist, but it's not like a naturally wooded area.
And my other question is, I see that the original house is further to the front. Is there a reason why this one is pushed so far into the 100-foot buffer? You couldn't.
Well, the house is 16 feet from the road right now, which is really close. I think that most people would prefer not to live that close to a busy road. So we've shifted this house back. I suspect that the front yard setbacks have changed since the original house was built, and that this house is required to create a greater setback than was done in, say, the 1920s.
Okay. Great. And then my last question is about your deck. How high off the ground is your deck, and what's going to be underneath it?
You know, I'm going to refer this to
I can answer that.
Nazar Vincent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to, great, Mary, great presentation, by the way. Just wanted to touch base on the garage. We put the garage on the front instead of the side. And that is the reason to put it on the front is to eliminate the, obviously create more, less pavement, and also create better pitch to the driveway, to the garage. So that way it's not a deep incline. Right now, the driveway is really on an incline, and we're trying to avoid that, especially with a busy road. An end user coming out, in and out, could be quite dangerous if they slip up or lose the grip and run onto the road or down into the driveway, into the garage. So that's that. As far as the setback, yes, the house is located very close to the street. Old setbacks, who knows when it was changed, but the setbacks back then were not really in existence, or if they were very close. The new setbacks are on average 25 feet, 20 feet from the front, so that's what we're going by. Also to address your deck question, very great question. It is a deck that can water can go right through, so it's not any kind of roof or anything. And we're planning to put drainage underneath it with about 12 inches of crushed stone to be able to drain the water. So all the water that would be coming off of that deck would go right into the stone. And the gutters, as you can see, are placed everywhere. So all that water is going into the infiltration system on the right of the house. Along with, as Mary mentioned, this is well designed to accept 1 inch of water on the entire property. The trees that you see in the back are existing. And then you see like the little shrubs everywhere, the little black one and the little not so hatched ones. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 1, 2, 3, about another 10 or 9. Those are not there. That's what we're proposing to plant.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else, Paulina?
No, that's it. It does look like your house is at least 42 feet or 40, almost 43 feet from the road, but
I mean, it's
not si-
again,
you
it's
know.
a busy road. We wanted to split the adequate amount of front yard and backyard. So that's kind of where we derived. And again, if we bring the driveway, bring the house closer to the street, we're starting to lose our setbacks. If you can see the right side corner of the house and the left side back corner of the house are pinching the the setbacks. If you can see that, the 15'6" on the left and
Mhm.
on the right, it's 16'5", and we're right there. We're trying not to be right on the setbacks because, sometimes it can cause a surveying error, but try to stay a little bit away from them.
Okay. Anything else, Paulina?
No.
Reed, any comments, questions?
Yeah. So the trees to be removed, are those all Norway maples, or those include some of the lindens that were on the tree list?
They do include the lindens, I believe.
They do.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, have you given any thought to trying to save those? I mean, are the lindens in good health? I mean, those are healthy native, or I mean, those are good native trees that are productive for wildlife. So I'm not super thrilled, but to see them cut down.
Yeah, I think the problem with the lindens is that we can't do a tree well around them because of the depth of fill that will be going in that location. I agree with you that there are lost. The Norway maples I feel less strongly about, but we could certainly add lindens to our tree planting list. I was more looking at buffer zone plantings in terms of visual aesthetics and longevity, but I don't have any problem planting lindens.
Yeah, I mean, it's more the fact that they're mature trees that are there, right, already, right? So,
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just, our site grading means that you can't save them with the proposal we have in front of you.
yeah, okay. Well, if there's any way to change that, I know you've already done a lot of thinking about this, and that's clear that, that a lot of thought has gone into this already, but, if there's any way to save them, that would be fantastic. And then looking at your tree list, I mean, I think we'll ultimately want to see a more specific, planting plan, but, I don't know if balsam firs are the right tree here. I mean, they generally grow further north and, you know, they're not on our list of, cover placement trees.
Yeah, we can look at that. I mean, part of the issue was I was trying to think of screening.
Yeah,
And
I'm just not, oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt
yeah,
you.
and I just didn't want to have just a homogeneous group of white pines. I personally am not a big fan of like arborvitae. I'm not sure that cedars grow well in a shady area like this. You know, I was a little limited just by the conditions we have there, but we can look to diversify if that's an issue.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that those aren't gonna thrive there. And then, yeah, I mean, in terms of, you know, the white pines and the white and red oaks, is it, so is this, will the roots be wet, or is it, I guess I'm just like, you have
No.
your, this wet, okay, they will, okay, all right, so then that doesn't concern me as much, but yeah, it's the firs that, you know, that I'm not so certain about.
Yeah, we can certainly substitute them for another native, hopefully an evergreen, but we're pretty open.
Okay. All right, I think that, or yeah, and then the shrubs, you know, the list of shrubs look good to me, but okay, I think that's everything I had.
Thank you.
Fred, anything?
Does anyone have any more questions on the trees that are in red and why maybe some of them could stay and some of them have to be eliminated to explain that a little further?
Well, let's go down through the commissioners now. Fred.
Yes,
any comments?
I was wondering if I could see a comparison. Well, my question is impervious surface moving closer to the wetland with this new project or not? And I'm wondering where the location of the new planting of trees would be. I see the shrubbery, but I assume that's different from where trees would be planted.
Well, the trees that we're showing are the white flowery looking symbol.
Yep.
And I believe we're showing the planting of 14 native trees. And then the plantings in front of them were the shrubs. That, you know, in real life, we may stagger them or, you know, plant the shrubs in clumps, but it's just a way of us calculating the appropriate density. In terms of, is the impervious closer? It depends on whether you're talking about the house or the pavement, because there's an expansive parking area that goes fairly deeply into the yard right now that will be coming out, which is how we reduced our impervious cover. I believe the house, because we've set it further back from the street, is closer to the buffer zone, but the pavement that we've removed was the closest feature in the current condition.
And just to Mary's point, you can see underneath the black, dark gray, well, not black, but dark gray, new proposed perimeter of the home, there's underneath, you can see where the old driveway was and how far it goes. It goes way further than even the proposed deck is.
Yeah, it goes really to almost to within 30 feet of the wetlands.
And that was asphalt.
Yes, yes.
It is asphalt. You can see it on site now.
It does. Okay.
Someone was using this as like a staging area for businesses, so it's quite disturbed.
I believe your plan says it's lawn. in the
It
back of
will
the
be
house.
lawn.
It says
but it-
there, it's in light gray, which is existing conditions.
I was gonna bring that up and show in the photos. I don't really agree with that designation.
I don't think, I think lawn's an exaggeration, but
Okay, well, we can get to the photos. Fred, do you have any other questions?
One last question. With the additional fill that you're proposing, how is this lot going to compare to the adjoining lots on either side in elevation?
well, we have a retaining wall on the east side of the lot that will allow us to match grades at the property line. And at the rear, we are our own abutter. We're discharging down towards the back as water flows now. And I believe we're meeting grades on the western property line as well.
Yes, yes. There's also a retaining wall on the left side from that abutter against the driveway, so we're not really disturbing. The house is totally on the opposite side of the lot, of their lot. So,
Yeah,
and
the
everyone has this gully to deal with, or whatever we call it. Quite big of a drop in vegetation and grade.
while the infiltration system will reduce the volume of surface water runoff, the pattern of drainage on this lot has not changed significantly.
Okay,
Yeah,
anything?
I just, what I'm thinking ahead to is the water absorbing capabilities, capacity that you're gonna lose when you take these trees. And where that, you're gonna have a lot of, fill with no roots and no sort of soil structure. And how that's gonna change the water flow. I'm not sure I can picture it yet, but that's the question in my mind.
I think you do have some short-term loss from the loss of the Norway maples and the 2 lindens. But the soils that are on this plateau behind the existing house are heavily compacted, that if we add new fill, there will be better aeration in the first couple feet of soils on this site. And eventually the new trees will take up water much as the Norways have now. They're smaller at this point in time, but they will grow. And I think that the overall infiltration of the yard will be better because it's not something that's been driven on by trucks and parked with pallets of bricks and things.
We're definitely improving the area for sure. It's really disaster on how the land was treated thus far.
Okay, those are my questions for now. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Fred. I have a few comments and questions. I actually went out to the site this afternoon, and it's an interesting site, and I would encourage all of the commissioners to take a trip out there because looking at a two-dimensional plot, unless you're really familiar with this kind of situation, sometimes you don't get the picture. And I know that Deb has some photos. I also have some photos, so we could share those after we get everybody's comments. I think that the report and the materials that were put together for this application were quite complete, and I think it makes it easier for us to try to evaluate what you're doing. And I would venture to say that, your application could be used as a model for completeness because there was really no major missing pieces. There are a couple of things that I think could be improved. One is that the trees that you're going to remove, if you could put a number on those trees so that we could correlate it to your list, because I think you did a great job in inventorying the trees. And
Understood.
and then I think some of the commissioners would like to see more specificity as to where the replacement trees are going to go, although I think you've shown a broad brush of where they're going to be. I think maybe if you could be more specific, that'd be fine. As far as your infiltration system, I think that you're complying with the Needham bylaw and also our wetlands bylaws. We'll probably request that you do a test pit before you install the system, just to confirm that the soils would have that capacity.
Yeah.
And that's all I had.
I believe we already have, Mr. Commissioner, I don't mean to interrupt, but I believe we already did do the percolation.
Yeah, well, if you did, then, submit that information. That would be useful. So I
You
think,
have Sue. Sue left.
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm here. Do you see me?
Yeah, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm
Well,
sorry. I didn't mean to jump ahead of you.
Okay, that's okay. Basically three things, and I'm kind of echoing Reed and Fred a little bit. But question number one, so the larger footprint, but it is being made less impervious, is because of all the pavement that was there. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's how you were able for it to become less impermeable with such a
Yeah.
larger footprint.
Well, it's larger in some ways, but it's also more efficient. Like the other house that's out there now has some sections that are 1 story, some that are 2. Like it's had a bunch of weird little additions, and our new house is more compact. So between having less fringe building and pulling out the impervious that we no longer need, we have reduced the impervious cover on the site.
Okay, and then second part is the fill in the backyard that you're doing with the grading and the retaining walls. Is that's within the it's within the 50-foot?
Yes, there's no work in the 0 to 25, but there is some grading to the 25. The retaining walls are 25 to 50.
So will the retaining walls be within part of the 25-foot?
No, I think they're outside the 50. They're further higher.
Okay, and what percentage of that zone, say from the 25 to 50-foot, will be graded with that fill?
None.
I think most of it will be.
No, I think she's asking the opposite.
Oh,
From the 25 to the 50-foot. I'm assuming that's where the grading, the fill is going to be, in back of the house.
well, the fill will be tapering down to that point because we're not putting in walls, we're grading it out gently, and that's where we're doing our planting of our trees within the 25 to the 50.
Okay.
So there'll be some new soil, but we're not that far off grade. We're not raising the yard several feet at the back of the lot.
So the grading is between the 50 and the 100-foot, or in front of the
Primarily.
50.
I mean, it tapers down, but the bulk of it is higher on the lot.
Okay, so I guess my question is, within that zone from the 50-foot, will it mostly be fill? I mean, is that what will happen? I guess my concern is, and actually I've had a personal experience myself with the house next door. My concern is what Fred was talking about, is with those trees taken out, and if all that fill goes in there. I know there are retaining walls. I'm just a little concerned with nothing to ground that fill, that it could go into places where with runoff that you wouldn't want it to go. So I do have a little concern there.
During construction, we would have erosion controls in place at the limit of work line, and those controls would remain in place until it was vegetatively stabilized. Whether this homeowner decides to do sod or attack a fire and seed probably depends on the time of year that they're doing the landscaping and what they'll be.
The fill will be gone.
No, the fill will be incorporated into the planting medium. That the fill is our planting medium.
Okay, it just looked like on the map that that the trees, the replanting plan was going to be outside of the fill, so the fill area.
Well, I
think if you look at the plan, there is the new grades, and then the existing grades are kind of shaded. And so it looks like the existing grade is probably towards the back end of the site in the, right past the 50-foot zone is around 95. elevation 95, and it looks like it's going to be graded from 96 down to 94 in that area. So,
Yeah, and truthfully, the soil there could use refreshing. Whether it happens by digging it up and aerating it or adding clean fill with more voids in it, it can only improve that area of the site.
I just
Okay.
want to add also some of the questions in our qualifications and background and experience. We've done quite a bit of these kind of projects throughout different towns. And what we do in these situations, we put stabilizing vegetation fabric, and it stays until grass, there's no need to take it. It just stays like burlap. And so that helps tremendously. I know what you were asking is will the loam and topsoil wash out and things like that? So that adds to the stabilization of roots. And I also wanted to mention that right now there's no stormwater of any kind, stabilization or control of any water runoff. So we're mitigating that completely with this project, where right now water just runs wherever it wants to run. I don't think there's even a gutter system there. And if there is, it doesn't go anywhere other than on the soil.
Okay, thank you. And my third is real quick. I just wanted to, I also echo Reed on a more detailed, and I guess Dave, a more detailed replanting plan. Yeah. And I'm done.
okay, thanks. So I guess Deb, you were the one that looked at this site a little.
Yeah,
Do you have any comments at this point, or do you want
yeah,
to, you want
I
to show your
do.
picture? Show your picture.
Yeah, maybe, can you put the plan back up, Clay? Thank you. So I have a few questions. So the whole back of this property is forested, correct?
I wouldn't call it forested. It has, I don't know, 22 trees in it.
No, I mean the rest of the property.
Oh, completely. Yes, yes.
Right.
It's just a natural wetland and buffer zone area.
So I'm wondering, since this is a forested area, if the 50-foot buffer zone, no disturb, should be enacted here, because that's a large vegetated area that would probably be considered wildlife habitat. So I wanted to bring that up.
Are you saying that you think there's habitat on this site?
Well, because there is habitat, the whole rest of the property is, and even though this is Norway maples and there isn't much in the way of ground vegetation, it's still a forested area. So it's kind of a continuation of the rest of the property, which may enact the 50-foot kind of no disturb area. As far as the lawn goes, so it looks like you're gonna be expanding the lawn area, and are you putting the plantings along the perimeter purposefully to have the rest of the area be lawn? Or why couldn't you do the plantings within the area that you're removing the other trees once the fill is in, and kind of naturalize that whole area again?
We certainly could. Part of our issue was screening, that it's not a particularly attractive area down below, and there are houses that rim it that in the winter you can see right across. So we had proposed evergreens to try and screen that from this new house, but we can certainly stagger the plants and change the layout slightly.
Okay,
Just to bring up one last point, the only trees that are being removed are the ones encircled in red. There are
right.
others that are pointed out, but we're not removing them.
So I found it odd. So the tree report didn't talk about the health of any of the trees. usually when we see these tree reports, you know, it gives the diameter and kind of the health assessment of the trees that are coming out. I didn't see that as part of this. When I went to the site, it appeared as though the trees were relatively healthy. So, and all this fill is going in so you can have a below ground drive-in garage, correct?
Yeah,
not-
it
I mean,
relates to the elevation of the house.
The biggest thing is maintaining the right pitch for ambulance and fire department to pick up, in emergencies, and we can't have a steep driveway as ambulance or fire department will not make it up the hill, nor they will even approve this kind of pitch as well. So we're looking to make sure it's adequate distance, not too far, not too close, and we found a balance between all of us, especially working very hard, I think maybe at least 6 or 7 revisions with the civil engineer to make it all fit on the setbacks and make sure that we have adequate distance for the chamber, because that has to be a good amount of setback from the property line as well. And then we coupled with the walls on the right, left the trees alone. Like if you see some trees that are even in our grading area, we felt that it's no need to touch those trees because we're not gonna be really embarking on them. Leaving some trees on the back behind the 50-foot setback buffer zone would be okay, but we're just afraid that we don't want to cover the roots too far up the stem and possibly kill the tree by choking it. But if commission thinks that we should protect them via like a well that we've done before, and be creative, we could see what we can do at very least on the 2 standalone trees that are marked behind the 50 or within the 50-foot setback. If you see the dashed line, I think that would be something we could try.
Okay, and I guess if you commission wants to see photos, if Clay can put those up.
Do you know what kind of trees those are between the 25 and the 50-foot setbacks?
Those are in the
I think they're Norway. I think the lindens are the 2 that are the.
They're
Yeah.
towards the front near the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, I mean, if they're Norway, another thing we could consider is, allow them to be removed, but leave them up as snags. Potentially, we could consider that.
Well, is it gonna be lawn area in there?
Yeah, I don't think this snags is gonna do it.
Yeah.
I think that's a dangerous thing, but I think if they're Norway, I'm not sure that the value is there for putting in the tree well. The lindens are the higher quality trees, but they're in an area that's getting more fill.
Yeah. Yeah. I may want to just share a personal experience. I planted a balsam for 37 years ago, and in the last 10 years it's declined, and I finally gave up on it. It's just too hot. It's just too hot here for them now.
Yeah, I have two. There are 2 in my neighbor's yard that are dying too.
So
Yeah, no, I'm happy to look further at our plant list. I just wanted to diversify the white pines a little bit.
Sure.
Would take place at the right time of the season as well. We have an arborist that has been specifically hired for this reason to coordinate everything and took all of the dimensions, as you can see. Thank you for pointing that out on the plan of which tree is what. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, it'd be helpful to put those numbers on the other plan.
Yes, sir.
So are the trees that are marked in green on the site, are those the ones to be removed, or are those just what were on the tree plan?
If you
I
could-
don't know. And that's not ringing a bell with me. It may be something that the surveyors tagged. It wasn't something that Nazar or I put up there.
Okay. Do you want me to send you the pictures again, Clay?
No, I've got them now. Are you ready?
That could have
Oh,
been the arborist that tagged them. If you're saying the trees are tagged,
Yeah, they have green paint on them.
maybe that might be the arborist,
Mm.
because I don't think, unless
So
someone
that's,
was trying to locate the locations of them.
so that's the area that you were saying was lawn.
It's
Um,
not on.
no, that is not lawn.
We're saying it will be lawn, so maybe
No, they're on the existing conditions. It
Oh, okay.
calls that
So
out as being lawn.
that's wrong. Yeah.
Bad lawn.
Yeah, you can keep going, Clay. Thank you.
See, this picture here shows the impervious surface of that driveway, approaching the wetland. That's the closest impervious to the resource area on this property.
Yeah, I would note that the tree line in the trunks that you can see the furthest, that's
The drop.
the drop, yeah.
So those are the trees to be removed there. The ones towards the middle of that picture are the linden. That's the side of the house. I think that tree is slated to go. That's at the edge of the patio. That's from the rear, looking at the back of the house. That's kind of where the debris is, from, I guess, whoever the owners were previously.
There was a lot, no, I think he rented it out. There was a lot more when we first saw it. I think he's taken his toys and gone home.
Okay.
That's what he left.
Mm-hmm. So that's the wetland, that's the slope that goes down to the
The
wetland.
stuff that's there, we didn't put that, we would remove that, of course, during cleanup.
Those are all the trees you want to remove and put in lawn in, is that correct?
So those are the trees, yeah, looking towards the back of the house.
With the equal amount of new trees.
We'll double
So
them.
can you not put lawn in there and instead put the trees in there and have it go kind of natural?
Doesn't leave the house with very much yard area.
I know. That's
that-
kind of the give and take when you put in a bigger house.
Yeah, I
And
think,
you want the screening plantings, but those aren't necessarily the best wildlife, so.
well, we can look at the plant list and, you certainly can screen with deciduous. You just have to stagger them and maybe plant them a little closer. But I think that we would like to expand the yard area into the 25 to 50-foot zone for this project.
So I guess the commission would have to decide if they're holding a 50-foot no disturb or a 25-foot no disturb.
We're looking for a family to live there and everybody would appreciate to have a cleaned up yard. And with all this mess, I think we're improving the property.
I think you can have a clean yard, but if you have a smaller house, you'll have a bigger yard too, so.
Could the lindens be saved?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Okay, so
Could the lindens be saved?
We'd have to get back to you on that and look at the fill and the condition of them in the field. I don't want to say yes or no without looking at them again.
We felt that we're not taking out an unnecessary amount of trees. We've shown that we've saved some on the left side back corner. We could have expanded or asked the commission to have us expand more lawn, but we respect the natural habitat. we've done enough work around the areas to have proven ourselves that we have not violated any Conservation Commission laws or requirements. Built next to lakes, ocean fronts, and wetland, and
Yeah.
we respect what we do.
Yeah, thanks. I think a key question here is, whether or not the commission feels that the 50-foot no disturb zone is applicable here, as Deb has put forward. So I think that's the most important issue. Second to that would be whether, you can save some of the trees that you're proposing to take down. So,
Yeah, I think that it would be helpful if you're going to decide between the 25 and the 50 foot that commission members go out and see it. Because I have worked on projects in Needham where you have imposed the 50 foot, and it usually was because there was something of value to be preserved. I'm not sure that that's the case here, and I think you should make that decision in the field.
That sounds reasonable to me. I can get out to look at it within a few days.
Could we arrange a certain site visit time?
I think you could go out there anytime. The site's unoccupied,
Yeah.
unless you want to go out as a group.
I somehow I think it's more productive to go out as a group.
Except that we can't discuss the project, so I mean.
But for all to see it together.
Yeah,
Is there something against if a certain number of us get together, we have to post it as a meeting, or no?
You just can't discuss the project.
Discussion.
Site visits are exempt from that particular regulation. You can say, oh, look at this tree, I like this tree, but you can't say, should we save this tree?
Sue, are you going to the stormwater meeting Monday?
Yes, I am.
Because if you want to, I could meet you out there before that, if you wanted to.
Oh, that's sweet of you, Deb.
Yeah.
I'll call you. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Yeah,
all right, so,
Thanks.
anybody else who wants to go out to the site, I would say feel free to go. If you want somebody to go with you, then, say so.
Would you like any one of us to meet you there?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. I think
Or
right now,
or the tree arborist maybe to help you identify some things? He's a very nice man and would accommodate.
yeah, I know. I think he did a great job. I think the important,
I think if they could number the plan so it coincides with what he has would probably be
yeah,
helpful.
and I believe they're all going to do that. But I think in order for us to render a comprehensive decision, the issue of whether or not we're going to enforce the 50-foot no disturb zone is key, and so anything we do before that consideration, I think, is premature. So, I mean, it's probably premature for us to do that now because others haven't seen the site. So by the time we get to the next meeting, we should be able to resolve that.
Can I ask, I don't know if you're not able to do it, but can you mark out the 50-foot buffer and the 25-foot buffer out there, maybe with a couple stakes, just so we can get a visual of where those lines would be?
I think so. You just have to tell us a date to have it done by, because it's gonna be hard next week with 4th of July week. And if you're gonna do your site visits next week, that's gonna be tough.
Do you have the 25-foot flags out already?
It's
Yes,
at the
I'm
top
fine.
of the slope. It's the 25 you could find because you'll fall off if you go to the 24.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah, well, I think when you go out there, it's pretty straightforward. You'll see-
Bring a tape measure.
Yes, I would say that would be it. You can see my flags out there, and if you assume that when you take a step further and fall, that's the 25.
Okay, so,
So I have a question for the commission. When you say that the no disturb 50-foot directive or whatever, you mean from 0 to 50, there'd be no disturbing?
that's correct.
Is that what's, okay,
There's a 25-foot no disturb, no questions asked zone, and then there's the 50-foot no disturb zone if it's considered to be wildlife habitat.
okay. Thank you.
All right, so if there's no further questions, we should continue this hearing until our next meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to look at the site and
Yes, I'm working on 1 second. They're just closing here now.
There isn't anyone in the audience, right?
yeah, is there any further questions from the commissioners? No?
And I don't see any hands in the audience. I did speak with one abutter earlier today who just had concerns related to the retaining wall along the side of the property line. Just looking for additional information or making sure there's due diligence that that retaining wall isn't compromised. For the most part, the retaining wall is outside the buffer zone. It only extends a little bit. So I did defer their concerns as well to the building department, but there was just some concern about maintaining the stability of this wall when they do the grading and the foundation work.
If I may, I can address that. It's pretty far away from where we're digging, and it would not be compromised by anything. I saw that wall. It's pretty stable too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was contacted by the building department today just to bring that up as well.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to continue this hearing to July 11th, 2020. Okay, let's vote. Sue,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Melina,
Hi.
Bill,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
Awesome. We will see you in 2 weeks.
All right, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so the only other thing that I think we had planned on for the agenda was to talk about the or to kick off a project to look at our existing regulations and bylaw and maybe recommend some changes. Now, I know that there's a committee that's looking at this, or going to look at the stormwater bylaw and maybe upgrade that, update that. There's a committee, sort of an ad hoc committee that's going to meet soon to look into the possibility of a tree ordinance for the town of Needham. No, this is something that would go beyond the Conservation Commission. So, you know, Deb and I were talking the other day and looking at our wetlands regulations, which would, you know, includes the tree guidelines and also includes the our bylaw. And there are some issues, I think, some of which, you know, we bump up against frequently in our meetings, and it probably would be helpful if we could clarify some of these issues. And then we'd have to have a public hearing, and, you know, if in the case of a bylaw, we'd have to go to town meeting, but in the case of our own regulations, we would just have to have a hearing.
Like which particular, like you, for a couple of examples, Dave?
Well, the two things that I see coming up constantly are trees and stormwater. Okay, and you know, the town has a stormwater bylaw. Our wetlands regulations have some stormwater provisions, and I would say half the people forget about the bylaw, and the other half forget about our provisions in the regulations for stormwater. And you know, I think they need to be aligned at some point, but at a minimum, I think it should be clear to applicants what they have to comply with. So, you know, so we don't have to argue with them. With regard to trees, you know, we revised our tree policy, but I think the thing that is coming up, including tonight, is, you know, what justification do people have for taking down trees? You know, or what justification do we have for telling them that they can't take down trees? The performance standards and other aspects of both the state and the local regulations don't really get into any detail performance-wise about trees. You know, there's broad statements about, you know, stormwater, you know, not affecting stormwater runoff and not affecting habitats and all that. But you know, if we apply those strictly, then we wouldn't let anybody take down trees. But yet, you know, you have homeowners that are, you know, wanting to use their property, whether it's a, you know, an existing property with small change or a tear down with a bigger house. I think there is a lot of people in town feel that larger houses are not a good thing for a variety of reasons, and you know, they're using whatever regulations they can find to you know, to push on that. Whereas, in my opinion, that really should be in the purview of the planning board. And you know, they have created, you know, zoning regulations that address large houses, but a lot of people don't feel that that's good enough. And so some people would try to use the conservation regulations as a mechanism for reducing the size of the house. So I think a lot of that we could improve the regulations with regard to that. And then, you know, maybe there are some procedural things that we can improve on. And I'm sure you all would have some ideas about making some improvements. So it's been, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 years since well, maybe 15 years since the regulations were written. So
Is it about 40 pages long?
the regulations, I forget. I think
Yeah, it's 40 pages. Exactly.
Oh, it is.
yeah,
I knew it was big.
yeah, and our tree guidelines are like 3 pages. I mean, I think we can improve on that too, but again, it took about a year to get some modest changes in those guidelines through. You know, I don't want to, you know, be creating work for everybody, but I do think that this might be a good time to look at this. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there, see how people feel, and you know, who might be interested in digging into this.
I'm happy to work on this.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Fred?
Yes, I was going to say that the Climate Action Planning Committee that just finished its work has 4 or 5 priorities that they recommended. And one of these was creation of a tree preservation bylaw. So I think there, you know, some momentum to do this. And definitely I'm interested in it as well.
Yeah, well, let me point out that we have regulations that are independent of the bylaws,
But are they limited to protection of wetland areas, Dave? or-
Right, and that's the issue that we have control over. We can propose new regulations. Like we proposed some modification to our guidelines. It was in a public process. I don't think we had a public hearing. Maybe we should have, but anyway, we could roll our tree guidelines into whatever other changes we want to make. I'd like to see and I've been thinking about drafting up some stormwater guidelines, maybe just a couple pages so that people know what they have to do. And we can do that independently of any thing that the town is going to do in general on trees. Now, I would point out that this has been a contentious issue in the town that I would say maybe 8 years ago, something like that. There was a group formed that attempted to try to get some traction on a tree ordinance, but it kind of died. Now a meeting has been called, I think it's next week, to just generally review where the town wants to go with that. Some of
The meeting's next week?
I think it is. I think it's or maybe I'm not. Maybe
Oh, wait, Clay, are you going to that?
I thought you were going to go to it. Right?
I think I'm going away.
Maybe
I may have asked
could be
Clay if he
wrong.
could do it.
no, I could be wrong. I got it.
You might be right.
Yeah,
We'll figure it out.
It's an informal meeting, and I think the meeting is just to test, the idea again with some people who, have been on some of the committees and boards around the town. And, if the town wishes to go forward with a tree ordinance, there are plenty of examples of tree ordinances.
Yeah.
And some of our abutting towns. And so I don't think it would be a big, big effort to draft a tree ordinance. So I think there'd be a lot of opposition to it, because most tree ordinances in this state, basically let a homeowner do what he wants to do as long as it's not a public tree. But if you're not an owner occupant, that's who gets limited in these tree ordinances. So basically it's against the developers. So, you expect them to push back, which is, it's fine. But nevertheless, that's something that the town may want to bring up. But that's sort of independent of what we do.
I'd be interested to look at the bylaws.
Yeah, okay, so I know it's a difficult task to go through the paper and, try to flag issues.
So, I have a question.
Yeah, Bill, what?
The bylaws are different than a guideline?
I'm sorry?
Different than an ordinance? Are the three
Okay,
different-
so the
Is a
bylaw and an ordinance are basically the same thing. And Needham has
and the
public-
guidelines are different though.
Well, let me explain it this way. The Needham has a set of bylaws that have to comply with state, requirements, as well as they have to be passed through town meeting. Okay, which is what happened with our wetlands bylaws. But our wetlands bylaw, and I would say the same with the stormwater bylaw, empowers a group to administer the bylaw, but also empowers the group to promulgate a set of regulations. Okay, so state regulations allow the town to form a conservation commission. The Conservation Commission bylaw allows the Conservation Commission to put forth a set of regulations in a public hearing. And then, take comments and then issue regulations. The stormwater bylaw is the same. There is a bylaw that's somewhat technical, and the bylaw also gives the select board the authority to issue regulations pursuant to the stormwater bylaw, but they never did that. So that's part of the confusion, I think, that's been created around the stormwater bylaw.
They're drafts, though.
Yeah,
draft,
there's some
yeah.
draft regulations, but they've
In,
never been finalized. The Needham regulations for wetlands are somewhat more restrictive than the state regulations, and they've been passed, and you know, that's what we use as our guidelines.
ordinance are with cities, right? Bylaws are with towns. Ordinance, it's the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah. They
But
gotta be
city-
voted, yeah, they gotta be voted on either by town meeting or by the city council or whatever. So it's like a law versus a regulation. That's the simplest. So. All right, well, would it be appropriate to say that those who are interested could take a look at the bylaw and at the regulations and be prepared to say maybe at another meeting or two, put forth what you think are the main issues that you think that you would like to revise, and then maybe we could then assign, you know, different revision to different individuals.
We could meet in person.
I don't think so.
I mean, I outside, an extra meeting.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. Can we meet to discuss the regulations outside of,
As long as we advertise it, I think we can.
even if it's not a hearing
Mm-hmm,
or pursuant to a hearing?
because it's if it's the majority of the commission meeting, it needs to be.
For any
adver-
reason? We can't meet for any reason?
Commission
Nope.
business.
Yep,
It's a gray area if you all decide to go to a party together and you're all in the same place and you're not discussing anything conservation related. That generally doesn't constitute a violation, but it's a high risk situation. But if you all get together to discuss the bylaw or events at Ridge Hill, if we do programming, like educational programming, we have somebody come in and you may discuss conservation funds. Usually that does require a posting, and I think the town practice is to post it just in case, to keep the door open in case you do want to discuss. As Mary Trudeau mentioned as well, the site visits generally don't require a posting up until you might start deliberating on site. So if it were a productive site visit, then we'd have to post that as well.
What if we used like a collaborative piece of software?
I think even to the extent of emails, when
I'm
you
talking about-
CC everybody on an email chain, when you do communication through staff that gets circulated, that constitutes deliberation. I mean, it really is. Are you deliberating? You know, are you?
What if we had like on Google Docs or something, a work in progress that people could
well,
comment?
didn't we already do that with like the tree bylaw?
Yeah. Or the
We
tree,
had something that people could put there.
I don't know. I don't think we posted like a Word document or, you know, Teams.
No, I thought there was something that we all could go into and add our comments to.
I don't
no.
think so, but that's sort of what I'm talking about. Is that appropriate or legal or?
We'd
Is-
certainly
is
have to
state
check with our town council, our town lawyer, but I mean, my understanding is you just don't want to be in a position where you're depriving the public of any observation of your ongoing business. So
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just, you know, trying to come to what the quickest way is that we could get everybody's thoughts and ideas.
I think a working document where you're each kind of redlining is probably not an issue, but to the extent that you start putting comment boxes and writing out your intents, maybe, I don't know. Unless it's a publicly available document. I mean, I guess that's something else we could run by town council, is if people could at least see in real time your edits. Or something.
I'll get in touch with
What I've
town
seen,
council if you want.
which I would hope to avoid, you know, on another committee, is that say administrator would send out a copy of the document and people would mark it up and send it back to the administrator. Then the administrator would combine all the comments and revise into a revised draft and then send that revised draft out. And I think that's sort of what we did with the
Tree guideline.
yeah, the tree guidelines. So that's kind of laborious with today's technology, I think. And then, yeah, and like a commission member couldn't be, compiling the draft, it would have to be the staff. All right, but if Deb, if you could look into that, I think that'd be great. And
Yeah, I will.
you also mentioned you might have some regulations of neighboring towns or towns in the area that might be good to give us some ideas.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I also have read I think it's the DEP produced a document about tree ordinances
Yeah,
and their variables and their benefits. I could circulate that do you have access to that, Dave?
yeah, but what the town does with a tree ordinance, I think is under discussion, and I don't think that's something that the Conservation Commission should.
Okay, all right.
I think we should look at our own tree ordinance. Okay, and at some point, if the town ever decides to do anything, then we can compare notes.
Okay.
Not to go on about this subject, but there are two parts of a tree ordinance. One is public trees. And there's already a state law about public trees, but in Needham, for instance, there's not any specificity to that. So if you want to take down a public tree, you got to have a hearing, but then developers got to kind of negotiate with the town building department, and there's a tree fund and all that, but it's not really well detailed. Whereas if you go to Newton, they got a list. If you're like a developer and you're taking down a tree, you got to provide one-to-one caliper replacement. In other words, if you take down a 32-inch tree, you got to put in 32 1-inch trees or 16 2-inch trees, right? Or pay into a fund, because if you take down a big tree, it's kind of impractical to put in 1 million compensatory trees.
Right.
Right. But I'll tell
And
you,
people that are building $5 million houses would rather put money into a fund than
yeah,
add
so
trees
yeah.
back.
And to say to somebody they can't take down a tree, I think, that's a stretch. That I haven't seen any town that has an ordinance like that. Whereas, in the Conservation Commission, it's not just, there may be more. There are more reasons for us to question whether a tree can be taken down. It's supposed, habitat value, stormwater, all these things we've been talking about. But yeah, I mean, I don't know where the town tree thing is going, but I think it could, it maybe influence any changes we might want to make.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you this, I have looked at a bunch of Conservation Commission tree ordinances around the state, and a lot of places don't even have them, right? And the ones that do, it's similar to what we do. And ours is a little more stringent, I think, than a lot of them.
Okay.
But the key question isn't so much the replacement, it's sort of what we were discussing tonight. Or the golf course for that matter. Okay, so hopefully we can get this moving and get to some good changes. So anybody have anything else?
I don't, do we have a deadline on when we should review this by? Because I don't know if I'll be able to do it by the 11th of July for our next meeting.
Yeah, I don't think we have a deadline. I would say maybe a month from now, if we could And then by that time, maybe Deb would have some clarity about how we could do this administratively and maybe put forth a few example regulate. I have a few. I'll send them to you, Deb, and
Okay,
you can take what you have and then maybe we could just distribute them for information to the commissioners.
okay.
All
And
right.
Clay did put up the our regulations
Yep.
in the Dropbox. So that is there for you to look at in your spare time.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, so somebody want to make a motion to adjourn? Or I will.
Adjourns.
A second.
Okay. Everybody want, raise your hand.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
all ayes. All right, thank you and good night. See
Happy
you in a
4th.
couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Happy 4th night.
Yeah,
Good night.
all right, take care.
Great. Enjoy the debate.
Bye. I'm going. I'm gonna have a drink. Bye.